All right, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be part 2 of our You Can Make a Game in Unreal kind of beginner's tutorial. Today we're going to go over some controls, modularity, and the blockout procedure. All very useful right when you're getting started. So, all right, let's just jump right in. Here's our level from earlier, and we're going to just continue on. But one thing I noticed is that we're going to have to make the ground a little bit bigger. So you can click on your plane here in the right hand side. Let's change the scale. Remember, this is in meters. We talked about that before. We'll go up 200 in each axis. All right, so there you go. Now you have a little bit bigger plane to work with. So now we can start building. So first, let's just go right down here to our content browser and create a new folder. Right click on content here and go new folder, and then let's call this meshes. It's always good to have a relatively organized project, so I'm going to kind of try to do best practices here for you guys. And we'll go up here and you can see where it says up in the toolbar selection mode. Let's change that to modeling mode because we're going to actually create some meshes. So that'll open up this rollout right here. And let's just build a basic wall. So let's tick on the box here. You can see the settings here with width, depth, and height. So let's go 20 wide. Let's go 300 deep and 300 high. And all of this is in centimeters. And then let's pop her in. So after you create your wall and add it into your scene here, before you hit accept here, there's a couple things in the rollout to still look at. And the main one here is this new asset location. You don't want it to make a new folder, so just click on this and go current folder. And we're on the meshes folder, so it's going to make the mesh in that folder. So if you hit accept here, now you'll notice down in our meshes it put this box with all these goofy letters and numbers on it. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is just delete the one that we put in the scene out, and then click on the one in the content drawer, and if you hit F2 you can quickly rename stuff, and let's just call this, let's call it SM underscore wall. Okay, so that's our first blockout mesh. So let's open that puppy up, and you can see here we can add our material. Let's go to our materials here in the content drawer. Let's take our blockout material and drag it over to the material slot here in the wall. And let's save that. Okay. So now let's go back to our meshes. And now we have our first basic wall. So now let's duplicate that a couple times in our content drawer. So you can either right click or control C and V, but if you right click, you can just go to duplicate, and let's call this SM wall, and let's call it CS. All right, and let's make another one, and let's call this SM wall SC. And then let's rename the one we named first SM wall SS. Okay? Now let's save those. Now we have 3 different walls here. And this will be apparent of what we're doing here in a moment. So I'm going to pull these into our scene. They can just be on top of each other. That's not a big deal. So let's just kind of separate those out by clicking and dragging. Okay? So this one is SS in the middle, SC on the right, and CS on the left. So what this is going to stand for is the C is for corner and the S is for straight. And it'll all make sense here in a moment. So now let's edit these blockout meshes. So let's go to modeling mode up here, and then the mesh section right here on the left, and then we'll go to triangle edit, and this will allow us to select specific triangles or edges or vertices. So let's select this edge on the end. You can see the controls down here. It says if you turn delta mode on, that would be local view. Otherwise, it's by world space. So let's turn on to the local coordinates. And now you'll see it puts this at 0, 0, 0. So now that's its coordinates of itself locally. So now let's just move it over a couple ticks. Let's move it over by 20. You see 20 there because that's how thick the wall is. So that would be how thick the corner would be. So we go accept, and now you can kind of see why we're naming the things we are naming them. So you'll see this one's named wall, corner on the left, straight on the right. This one's named, the middle one's named wall, straight, straight. So that's straight on both sides. And then the one on the right, once we edit it, will be straight and then corner. So now let's go back to triangle, edit here. Select our edge. Now our delta mode is already on, so that's good. And let's pull this until it's 20. If you need this to go to snapping mode, if you go up here on the top of your perspective toolbar, you can see how you snap it. So like here you can snap it to 10, 55, and 10. And we'll go over more of that in a little bit. So we'll accept that. And let's save all here. And now we have our 3 wall pieces. That's great. So what I'm showing you is just a basic modularity system for like laying out walls and floors. Now you're gonna, if you want to do different shapes and stuff, you're gonna have to make different kind of corners and figure out some of this stuff on your own. But I'm gonna run you through a very basic starting system so you can kind of get going and then hopefully build from there. And we're building them this way because in the future I plan on adding materials to this. At this point we don't really need to get into modeling software. We're just going to use Unreal, and then maybe later down the line, once we go through lighting, everything else, we'll get into modeling software. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to make a doorway entrance in these walls. So let's just get them out of here. I'm just going to delete them. Delete, delete, delete. Okay, now in your content browser, just grab all 3 of them by holding the control key and selecting all 3, and then duplicate them. Okay, now instead of wall, we'll call it doorway. So we'll go doorway, corner straight, and then we'll rename this one doorway, straight corner. And we'll name this one doorway, straight, straight. Okay. Now let's save quick. It's always a good habit to keep saving. Now we'll pull our doorway models into the scene. Okay. Now pull them apart like we did at first. And there you go. That should be in the right order. And now we're going to make a doorway Boolean model that we can use to cut out doorways into these walls. So go to create again up here, and we'll go to box again, and we'll put in some different numbers this time. So we'll put in 100 here, the width, 120 for the depth, and 220 for the height. Okay, and that'll be the shape cutout we're going to use. So we'll just pop that in there, hit accept, and it'll throw it down here. Let's rename this SM door cutout. Okay, so you're not actually going to use that for your door. You're going to use it to cut the holes in these walls. So save. And now let's focus in with the F key like we talked about in the first episode. And here we'll do it on this first one here. So let's make sure that our cutout shape is in the exact same position as our wall. So our wall is at 980, 1060 negative. And so we'll do the same thing here, 980 and negative 1060. Okay? And now we will do our Boolean. To do the Boolean, you go to modeling mode here, and you select your two items in the scene, and the order of selection matters actually. So select the wall first and your cutout thing second by holding the control key like I told you in the first episode. And then you go to Boolean here, and you'll see it already cuts it out. And that's the order that we wanted. If it wasn't and we had selected it different, you can do this B minus A instead of A minus B. But just try to always do it the same way. There's also a couple other selections here that you need to pay attention to. The first is I like to kind of keep the same materials. So if you pull this out a little bit, it'll say use first mesh materials. So you see when it is it going to cut this Boolean out, it actually removes the material on this inner edge, and you might want that, but for right now I don't want that. So we'll use first mesh materials, and you'll see that it fills that edge in. The other thing is you want to make sure that you want to write to the first input object. So this says output object here, it says write to, change this to first input object. Otherwise it'll just make a new object, and we already named these. So we'll just write it to the first input object, make sure the new asset location is in the current folder, and it should be because we did that at first, and then we can just hit accept. And ta-da! Now we have, if you look in our content browser, SM doorway CS, and it has the door cutout in it. So let's do that a couple more times just so that we can get used to it. So let's take our SM door cutout, pull it into the scene, put it at the same location as this wall here, 570, 1060. All right, now that we got both of those in there, select the wall first, then the cutout object, hit Boolean, and all of our settings are going to stay the same from the first one, so we can just hit accept. Okay, now we'll save again, and you can see our doorway cut out of the second one in our content browser. All right, so let's do it one more time. Pull in our cutout, check our location, negative 180, 1060. Select our wall, and then our Boolean object, cutout object. Go to Boolean, and there you go. That's our 3 Booleans. We'll save that. Now let's just delete these out of our world for now because we'll put them back in. So just select and delete them. So that's a great start. So now, to continue our blockout going, let's make our actual door. So we'll go to Create, Box. You see our settings here, 100, 120, 220. That was the settings for the cutout. We just need to change the width to 10. Remember, all of these are in centimeters. So there's our door. And we will hit Accept. And we will rename it in the content browser SM door. SM being for static mesh. So it's always good to have a naming convention for your stuff. We'll open up the door again so we can view it in the model viewer. Go to materials, and we'll put our blockout material on there. There, door is done. All right, so we have the doors, the doorways, and the walls. Let's make the floor and the ceiling very quick. Save that. All right, so let's make the floor. I'm just getting you kind of familiar with the modeling mode here in Unreal. Again, we're probably going to switch over to an external program at some point, but Unreal has a pretty good selection of modeling tools, and actually really useful ones, that do simpler things but faster. It doesn't have maybe all the options of like a full-fledged modeling tool, but it can do the simpler things easier in some respects. So it's just really nice. So let's make another box here. Just plop that in. It doesn't really matter. And we're going to just, instead, we're going to change these settings for the floor. So our floor settings are going to be 300 by 300 and then 20 high. Okay. So now if you look at this floor, everything that we built so far, it puts the pivot on the base, which is really nice. That's the way you like it. But if you want to change it, you can see this pivot location here has pivot on the base. You can put it center or top. We're going to keep it at the base because that's the easiest for me to use. Once we do that, we hit accept here. Let's rename it in our content browser again. SM floor. Open it up. Put our blockout material on it and save. So now you're kind of, with this kind of repetition, you're going to start to naturally learn skills, right? So the more you do something, the more you're going to understand what's going on. So let's go back to meshes again. Let's make the ceiling. So we go create box, and we can click anywhere in there, and it's going to save the settings that we had before. So we could have just copied it in the content browser too, which is fine, but we're just going to hit accept here. We're going to leave the pivot on the bottom. We're going to open this puppy up. We're going to go to our materials folder. We're going to add our blockout material, and we're going to hit save. So there you go. That's pretty close to everything we need to build our simple room. So let's grab these out and let's just delete these for now. Delete that. Delete that, and we'll go back to our door, because if you notice, if I focus in with F, I talked about this in the earlier video. If you notice, the door's pivot is right in the middle, which is great for most things, but on a door, you want to change the pivot. So to change the pivot on the door, we go back to our modeling mode over here. I'm going to save quick. And you click X form, and you can go to edit pivot. And we're still in delta mode, remember. And now our door is 120 wide. So if we move the pivot over 60, it'll go over onto one side. We don't want it on that side, so we'll go -60 to get it to the other side. And then you can focus in. And if you want to move it to the front or the back, because right now, if it's right in the middle, it'll kind of overlap funny when it opens up. So since the door is 10 wide, we just put 5 in here. We can put the pivot, and that would be the pivot if we wanted the door to open that way. Or like, I think we're going to do -5 because we're going to have it open in. So we're going to accept that and then save. And the changes that you make there are going to save in your content browser, and it warns you of that. You might have noticed the red text on the screen. So now that we have the door done, we have all the pieces we need to actually build our building. Okay, so what we're going to do now is create a building. So let's change the material on the plane so things can be more, they can pop out a little bit better. So let's create a new material. Go to your material folder here, bottom left, right click, duplicate our blockout material. We'll call it M blockout. I'm just going to call it blockout B for now. Let's actually call it blockout. Let's call it blue. Just to be a little bit more specific. Let's change from modeling mode to selection mode. Up here in the left, let's open up our blockout blue. Let's double click on our color and let's make it a light blue color. Okay. Save that. Let's just pull this on the floor so that when we put stuff on top of it, it's very apparent what's going on. Save. So now we're going to build our simple building. So we can fly around our level a little bit here, and we'll just start building now that we have the contrasty floor. Let's pull the floor in a little bit. And now I'm going to talk about the controls. Let's kind of close this down a little bit, give us a little bit more of a view. Up here on your toolbar are all of the useful positioning controls. arrow is select, and if you look at these, it also shows the hotkeys when you scroll over them. So you've got select here is the arrow, translate, which is basically move, is W, this is rotate, is E, and scale is R. And those are going to be the ones you use the absolute most. A lot of times I don't scale in the viewport, I scale over here on the right, so I know the exact scale numbers. You'll notice that these hotkeys are actually, if you keep your fingers on the WSAD keys, these hotkeys are up there. So if you learn them, you'll be pretty quick. You won't have to come up and click. Now during the video, I am going to come up here and click. That way you know what I'm doing when I'm doing it, as opposed to me hitting a hotkey and you don't know what I'm doing. So the other options we have here, this is snap related stuff. This is snap to surface here. That's kind of goofy. Let's see if I can show you that. I'll pull in, we'll turn that on. When it's blue, it's turned on, and we'll just bring in the door here, and it'll try to snap. You can see it's trying to snap the axis of the door to the surface normal of that sphere there. Could be useful depending on how you want to place things around, but it does rotate and position things in kind of crazy ways. So we'll delete that out. And then the next snapping option, we'll turn that off. I don't like that one. The next snapping option is, this is just your grid snap. So this is, it'll snap to these particular numbers. So if we put it at 50, which is probably what we're going to keep it around for a little bit, you can see it'll snap at the 50s. Same thing, this is for rotation here. That's angle. You can turn them on and off. If it's blue, it's on. If it's white, it's off. And then you can hand this one right here is for resizing. Like I said, I like to do resizing myself, but of course you can just do it in the viewport if that's the way you want to do it. So let's build our quick room now that we know the quick controls. I'll go over the ones on the right hand of the screen in different videos because there's a lot of other settings over there. So now we have our one plane. That's SM floor. So if you go Control CV, you can copy that and snap it right together. If you hold the Alt key and drag, you can also pull it out like that. So now if you hold Control down and select multiple at the same time and hold Alt, you can pull that back. So you can do it either Control CV, which is my preferred way, or you can hold the Alt key down and drag. And there you go. There's our floor. So now we have a 3x3 floor. Okay, so now let's add our walls in. I'm going to change my snap setting down to 10 here, and we're going to pull in our straight back wall. And you can see it's already trying to put it on top of the floor. So it's located at 20 up, which is really great. I'm glad Unreal tries to figure that out. Sometimes it gets it wrong, but it tries. And now we'll just pull this back and make it even with the back wall there. Let's make sure we're at the same position. 270, 270. So there you go, our first wall. Okay? And remember, escape deselects whatever you have. And now we'll put in wall straight corner for this here. And we'll snap that together just by using the controls I talked about and keeping the grid snap at 10 there. And now let's pull in corner straight for the other side. Okay, snap those together. And now we have our first wall. And it's looking great. So now let's do the side walls. We can actually select all three of these. Control CV, like that. Then we can do our angle, rotate this whole thing. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Beautiful. And then snap it back like that. And snap it like that. And make sure the corners snap good together like by looking. And there you go. That's a quick side of a wall. Save that. Control CV again, or Alt drag like I said before. Go back to our rotate tool here. Rotate it around. And if you want, you can change the snap setting on the rotation to like 90 or 45 to help you rotate quicker if you want. Then you can just bunk, and then it'll rotate right there. Let's go back to our move tool and pull this together. And everything should be snapping perfectly into place. So there you go. There's the start of our beautiful room. Now let's maybe grab this and this, Control CV, and rotate those. Let's see where I put there it is. And now I'll just pull this one back. There you go. Now we have our room and our original stuff kind of right here. Let's save this. Now let's put the door in. Now I made multiple doors. If you want to put the door in the middle, obviously, or on the side, you can choose one of the doors. And that's kind of to show you the different things you'd have to do to make the modularity system. Of course, to make other kind of rooms that would offshoot, you would have to actually make different types of, like an inner corner also. So let's pull in door corner straight, I believe is the right one, because we have to just rotate it around. So grab that, rotate it, dunk, dunk, and let's pull this puppy into position. Okay, so there you go. Now it's all snapped together. Now we can bring in our ceiling, which I never did rename, it seems like over there. And then rename your ceiling here, F2, and call it SM ceiling. Beautiful, right? Now we grab our SM ceiling, and here we go. Let's make sure that that's snapped right to the top. And once we get that in position, we can change our snap setting to a higher one. So I'll put it up to 50 right there, and then we'll just start copying that. And I want to leave an opening for the top of the building because when we do our lighting tutorial, we're going to kind of go over that. Control CV or Alt drag and pull it in. And you can see how all these pieces modularly fit together. So this is a really good basic way of getting you started. Learning the very basics. Blockout is good. Modularity is good. And just keeping in mind scale and the size of things. We're working in centimeters here. So I almost forgot. We need to add our doorway in too. So let's go grab our doorway from our content browser and pull her in. You can see we'll have to put it up to 20 because that's where the floor is. Our snap is set to 50, so let's set that back to 10. Let's get our door in there. And our door needed to be offset a little bit. Let's bring it up 5 so it can be right in the middle, as you can see. There we go. And then let's use our rotate. Let's change the snap back to maybe 10 degrees, and let's just rotate it open. There we go. Now we have our door in there. All right, great. So we have our door that can open and close. So in the future, I plan on using this building as kind of a base for all sorts of different tutorials going forward. And then we built it a very specific way for very specific reasons. One thing we're going to do next is going to be lighting, because I feel like lighting is one thing you try to nail down early. Also, when you build models this way, it doesn't automatically put the collision on them. And I have another video that goes over symbol collision in Unreal, so you can check that out. But in the future, when we add our movement and our camera and all that kind of stuff, I will add collision to this. So that's everything. It should give you a good base of modularity, building, the controls, and now we can move forward to more advanced topics. That'll be a lot of fun to do. I really want to thank you guys for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I'm trying to do my best here, and I really hope you guys have a great day, and take care.